Welcome to the Voices for Voices podcast, sponsored by Redwood Living. Thank you for joining us today. I am Justin Allen Hayes, founder and executive director of Voices for Voices, host and humanitarian. You can learn more about Voices for Voices on our Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and our website, voicesforvoices.org. Voices for Voices is a 501c3 nonprofit charity organization that survives solely on donations. So if you're able to, please consider heading over to voicesforvoices.org to help us continue our mission and the goal and dream to help 3 billion people over the course of my lifetime and beyond. Or you can send a donation to the mailing address of Voices for Voices at 2388 Beckett Circle, Stowe, Ohio 44224. Are you looking for a volunteer opportunity? Great. You can reach out to us today via email at president@voicesforvoices.org. I founded Voices for Voices to provide a platform for folks to share their stories with others as we work to break the stigma around mental health, accessibility, and disabilities, helping people get the help they need, while also helping them prepare or transition into the workforce with the Voices for Voices Career Center, where we connect talent with opportunity for job seekers and employers from coast to coast and in every industry and job level. In today's episode, I am happy to be joined by Erik Frederickson, founder of Recovering Reality. He's located in southwestern Florida and Cape Coral. Erik, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, it's a pleasure, privilege to be on, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. For our audience, maybe we can get started with a little introduction about yourself, and maybe going into some of the maybe the lower parts of life, and then we can end on a positive high note, giving hope and inspiration like you do.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Maybe I'll start with just a snippet of where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And then tell people a little bit about the story that this was not always the way that it is right now. So I have the privilege now. So I'm 40 years old, married, 3 kids, all boys. They keep us very busy. Still 6'5" and 1-year-old boys. And I have the privilege of working from home for a lot of my time and working one-on-one with business owners or individuals who are struggling with recovery and helping them overcome challenges they're facing, and even more so step into their purpose. I feel like it's a really big part. When people can grab a hold of a purpose, of a cause bigger than themselves, I think it really can change their identity and give them some extra drive and motivation. And so that's what I get to do now. I love what I do. Things change consistently, but the theme of helping people has always been there, because I wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for people helping me. Yeah. And so the more I can give back and help people, it's a great motivator for me and a privilege for me. But I'll say this. So, there was no drugs or alcohol in my family. Very religious. My family's all Mormon. I am not, but very good relationship with my family still to this day. And I was raised in a home where there was none of that at all. Moved to Utah from California to Utah when I was 10 years old, and immediately just felt out of place. A lot of the same things you hear from a lot of people who struggle with addiction. Just didn't feel comfortable in my skin, felt out of place. Those feelings in and of themselves don't mean it's okay to do what so many of us did for so many years, but nonetheless, they were there. And by the age of 13, I started smoking weed, drinking, and gosh, it was just really bad right from the start. You know, some people progress, maybe they start drinking in high school or when they're a teenager or whatnot, and maybe getting a little trouble here and there, but it takes years before it really takes over their life. That was not the case with me. It took over my life immediately. Getting in fights, problems at home, and getting arrested, and just the normal stuff that happens when addiction takes over your life, you know. But after about a year or so of just smoking weed and drinking, pain pills really exploded on the scene in America. Really, it was really the precipice, just the beginning of the opioid epidemic. And I had a root canal late one night. You know, it was killing me. And standard procedure, the dentist went in, family friend, late at night, and did it for us. And everything went accordingly and fixed my tooth. And out the door you go, and here's a bottle of Vicodin. And seeing as how I already had a liking to escaping reality, those painkillers did not help. And so it was, gosh, I don't know, about 15 or so painkillers came on the scene in my personal life, and just added to the problem. You know, I could sit and tell stories for a long time, as anyone that lived through addiction. It was bad. It was bad. A suicide attempt, an overdose. I watched when I started my recovery journey, which didn't start till I was 26. Over 30 of my friends died of overdose or suicide, freak accident, but just all involving addiction. And this was in, you know, quote, Happy Valley, Utah. You know, still to this day, I'll tell people some of my stories, like, really, in Utah? At that time, actually, Utah was in the top 5 states in the whole country for overdose deaths. The pain pills it exploded, and Oxycontin and all that. And, you know, it was bad. It was just bad, like it is for anybody that goes through that addiction. I kept trying to run away, you know. I'm sure people who haven't even struggled with addiction have tried this one. If I just pretend the problem's not there, it'll go away. It doesn't work, though. Try that with a bill collector. Just pretend it's not there and see if it magically goes away. I kept moving. I kept trying this. Let me just quit. I'll stop the pain pills for a little bit, and I'll just drink, and all the same things that many people that struggle with addiction go through. At 26, I was so defeated. I'd moved around many times. At this point, I was living in this little Nowhereville, Utah, down in southern Utah, in this little town, hiding in an apartment, drinking myself to death, really. You know, I had, maybe some people can relate to this. My external circumstances, when I finally hit my, you know, quote, rock bottom, had been far worse. I'd been in far worse situations, arrested and all that stuff that I mentioned. But at this point in my journey, it had never been worse internally. Internally, I was as low as I'd ever been. Sick, tired, defeated. I didn't even have any more bridges to burn. It was over, and I called my mom, and I was so broke I didn't even have money to drive home to my parents' house. Asked if they would send me a few bucks so I could have gas, and drove to my parents' house. Long story short, I got arrested on the way back, got pulled over, thrown in jail for the weekend. Got out Monday morning when you could finally see the judge, and off to rehab I went, and got out of rehab and stayed in Utah, gosh, I think for a week or two, tying up loose ends, and moved to San Diego. And that's where my recovery journey started, and my life really, truly started to change. And that was, I was 20, it was 3 weeks before my 27th birthday in 2009.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I mean, a lot of moving around, a lot of, you know, like you mentioned, like the external circumstances were always there and kind of doing their thing, but until you felt it internally, I mean, I can relate, and maybe some of our audience can as well, where you know, like kind of like an actor and actress, you're kind of going out and performing like in those external circumstances, and as long as internally you're not really being yourself, because you're, you know, being somebody else. I'm happy all the time. I'm having fun. I'm always in the know. And then when it gets to that point where where all those dominoes just stack up and stack up and stack up, it comes time eventually to have to make that decision, kind of like, okay, are we going to accept, let's get started on this thing to recovery, or, you know, take a different path. Looking back, why, maybe you don't know exactly, but why do you think, you know, your friends and colleagues and that you mentioned that had passed away, you know, that they went down that path? Why do you think you didn't go to that path? Or I know you mentioned an overdose time, but is there something that like stopped you at that point? Like, okay, wow, this is getting like too real. Like, I need to not stop, but I'll just take less. I'll do less.
Let me see if I can manage this beast, which is that doesn't work. You know, my simple answer would be the grace of God. Mm-hmm. I was just as bad or worse than any of my friends. If I had to sit down and give a perfect answer to it, I would say, you know, some of it I don't know. Grace. I can't say I can't say to some extent that I was, maybe heroin scared me, even though I did end up doing it for a little bit, but I definitely wasn't. You know, I was way more sophisticated. I did Oxycontin, not heroin, which is just as bad or worse. But I don't, you know, I guess my simplest answer would just be the grace of God. I mean, I was just as bad or worse than any of them. And this much I can say, I certainly want to capitalize on the opportunity and the new lease on life I've been given.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, from what I know about you and your background, you're taking that energy that was doing not so healthy, potentially negative things per se, to on the flip side of using that energy and that time to help others. And I think that kind of core value you mentioned at the beginning, that no matter what avenue you go down, which way the road goes, that helping others is going to be on that vehicle with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a big deal. You know, one thing, so in having worked with many people, specifically, you know, struggling in their recovery or still stuck in addiction, sometimes people who are in that spot, they don't want to listen to someone unless they've been through it themselves. And I understand it's not always the best approach, because just because someone hasn't been through it doesn't mean they can't help someone who is going through it. They could still have the knowledge and skills and have been trained to do so. But I also do get it that it's a pretty intense thing people go through, and so they want to talk to someone that's been through it. So that being said, you know, when you've gone through it and stepped into freedom, and then on the other side, you know, know how to steward that freedom and live in it, when you're speaking to someone who's in it, there's more of an authority on your voice. You have a better chance at helping them. You know how to speak their language. You know, for years, people have come to me and, I'm going through this and that and da-da-da, and you just, you know, you wouldn't understand. And I'm like, look, that might work on somebody. That doesn't work on me. So we're not going to try that again. I do understand. And if I can do it, you can do it. Yeah,
it's almost with my 4-year-old daughter, haven't gotten there yet, but I can foresee those types of conversations of, well, you don't know, you haven't been there, you haven't done it. And it's like, well, you know, I'm an adult, and
I was 4 once too.
Yeah, I'm not perfect, but I've probably done and thought about a lot of the same things. And I'm glad you brought up that a person doesn't have to have that lived experience to help somebody. There's, you know, you think about you know, people that haven't been through some of the difficult times that we're referencing, and they're still going to school. They're still getting to that point where, their work can come home with them. That psychological side where, think about like a firefighter. They go into a fire, they rescue people, or they recover individuals, and then they come home, and that's got to wear on that person, and police detectives, and morgue, coroners, similar. But I think that this is very similar to that, in that somebody is going to school for that they're preparing themselves, however that is. And I don't know, because I don't have that education. I just have that lived experience. But I really hope that the services are there for those individuals as they're going through, and they're learning not just through the textbook, where they're sitting in as an intern with a psychiatrist or a counselor of going, wow, like this is, the textbook kind of shares some. It'll give you like the diagnosis and some of the definitions, but that face-to-face interaction, like hearing that yourself, has got to be tough. So what keeps you wanting to continue that helping others? So it could be, I think about, I couldn't be a counselor, I couldn't be a psychiatrist, because I just don't have the mind and the toughness for that. And knowing what I do about what some of the things that you have and are currently doing, what keeps you going besides that wanting to help others? Like when you hear stories, when you're having those conversations, when they say, Erik, I'm going through this situation, can you guide me, give me some recommendations? How do you step away from that particular conversation and go on to the next conversation and continue to have the upbeatness of saying, look, this is what I'm here to do. I got that new lease on life, and this is how I'm going to move forward.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it is a real challenge for a lot of people who are constantly interacting, because it can be heavy. I'll just say this. So, the cliche, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. I think I said that right. People don't. Yeah, I said it right.
Yeah.
That is amplified when you're talking to people who are hurting. And in order to help people who've really gone through it and are really in need of some emotional, mental, physical, they need healing in all aspects of their life, total well-being. You need access to their heart. Because if they don't trust you and you don't have access to their heart, you're not going to make the progress. Even if it appears you're making it, they're not opening up and really giving you access to the area you need access to bring the change. And I think that there's simple things that you can learn in some schools. Just patience, kindness, tone of voice, simple communication skills are going to go a really long way. But in terms of staying, upbeat and healthy myself, there's a lot of things that we can do. But the bottom line is I need God every day. I start my day every day. I get up before the sun most days, almost most days, and I'm journaling, I'm in my Bible, and I'm praying. If I don't have anything to give people who are hurting, I'm not going to last very long in this. I'm going to get burnt out, tired, confused, angry. It's going to happen pretty quick. And so staying upbeat, I have to realize that I need to stay connected to God, and I need to get filled up first, or I don't have anything to give away. And secondly, I need to realize I'm not this person's savior. I'm not responsible. I'm not responsible for your actions. I'm not responsible for your life. When people come to me, they're giving me some authority in their life, and they're saying, I trust you, and I'm coming to you for help in this area. But still, I can't go do the actions for you. I can't get you to read and journal and pray every day. But I can't get you to have the tough conversations and make amends and these different things that need to happen. I can't do that for you. I can encourage you, guide you, keep you accountable. So for me, it's really two parts. One is I got to realize if I'm not connecting with Jesus every single day, if I'm not starting my day connecting to God, then I'm not going to have much to give. And in terms of detaching from, because it is heavy, man. People go through addiction. I've heard some stories. I've heard some stories that people wouldn't believe, that people have lived through, and some things when they were young in different situations. It can be crazy. It's heavy. But I also have to realize I'm not your savior. I'm not your God. I'm not responsible for that. I'm responsible to keep you accountable, encourage you, help you, empower you, but you are responsible for your life. Does that make sense, man?
It does, and that kind of leads into the next question that I didn't have on kind of our notes, but it sounds like the role of faith has been huge for you. Where you're at now, I guess, where did that begin? Did that begin, at 26 when things, you're at rock bottom, and that's one of the things you're just like, I'm at bottom, I guess I don't know. Like, I guess how did that work out? And it sounds like it's obviously continued to today. But I'm just curious for our viewers or listeners. Maybe they're at that point, or they know somebody that's at that point, and maybe faith is a way to go. Maybe it's not. But for someone like yourself, where it is and it was, what were maybe like some of the signs, and what got you started with the faith of looking outward, in the morning, that like you mentioned?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, man. It's a good question. I mean, so I was raised in a very religious home, and I'm just going to be transparent and honest about everything. My intention is not to ruffle anyone's feathers, but I'm just going to be real about my story. I didn't like it at all. My family is Mormon, and there's a lot of good things. So I have a ton of good friends in that religion. My whole family, I have good relationships with everyone in my family. I didn't like it. I just rebelled against it. Just don't tell me what to do and how to do it and when I have to do it and why I have to. Stop it. Yeah. And I rebelled against it in a very unhealthy way, and that's all on me at a young age. When I had also, when I was younger, had some very real encounters with God. And for sake of time, I'll just say they were very, very real, supernatural, multiple ones that I never questioned again if God was real. I didn't have a theological explanation for anything, but I was like, okay, well, God's very real. I had to go on a journey to see what my relationship with God looked like. But at 26, when I moved out of Utah, kind of by default, if I'm going to be honest, I was like, I don't want anything to do with religion, nothing. But this Jesus is amazing. Let's try him on as, quote, higher power. Yeah. It was kind of my mindset and approach at the beginning. And I gave it everything I had. I was, from the very beginning of my recovery, I get up before the sun. It hasn't changed in, 14 years. It still hasn't changed to this day. And immediately, I just began to have experiences, and my life began to change very quickly. He began to put people in my life. And, I know what my life's like without faith in God in it. I know what it's like. It's not good. I know what it's like now also with him in my life. And the real pursuit of faith and relationship with God in my life started out of desperation. I knew I was going to die. I was going to die. Jesus makes sense to me. I don't want anything to do with religion. And I started there, and like my life depended on it, because it did. And I knew that. And I've just made it my pursuit. And man, life's always going to have its challenges. Anyone that says life's perfect all the time, they're probably not being honest with you. Everyone's got their challenges that come up. But I can tell you this, man, life is so much better this way. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Thank you for being, again, so transparent and upfront about that, because I know it's deep. You're reaching again into your heart. It's not some superficial, I'm pretending to be somebody. It's here's something that's very personal nature to me, and it's been instrumental in helping me get to where I'm at and continue to go.
Yeah, I tried the superficial thing. It almost left me dead.
Yeah. So you mentioned your 3 boys in your, I guess your more immediate family. How has that, positively impacted you or continued? Just to reiterate, what you're doing, it's like, wow, like, seeing somebody born and then grow and then helping them and just being there when they need them, and how's that helpful, and how's that been helpful for you?
Yeah, it's amazing. I could look back in my life and see specific markers when things started to change. For bad and good, if I go all the way back, but at 26, obviously recovery changed things. And then when I got married, some things obviously start to change pretty significantly. But then when kids come on the scene, that changes that changes things real fast and real dramatically. But it's difficult to put into words, but children are a gift. They're not a burden. They're a gift. And if I'm ever seeing my kids as a burden, I'm the one that's not seeing things clearly. It hasn't changed. My kids are still a gift. I'm just not seeing it clearly. And, the responsibility and also the privilege of raising people,
yeah,
it's a lot. But I'll tell you what, kids are going to change you quickly and bring out just parts of you didn't know existed. They're going to motivate you because you're responsible. They're going to motivate you because you want to see them succeed. And you're going to have to constantly grow as well, because there's going to be constant new challenges with kids as they grow, and new frontiers you got to navigate with them. But I like to remind myself as much as I can that I have 3 healthy kids. I have a healthy marriage, an amazing wife. And there's a lot of people that want that and don't have it, or have had it and don't have it anymore. And as long as I could just keep my mindset that they're a gift and it's a privilege, it's very motivating and empowering. And it's just going to change it too. You got to learn how to be more patient.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to communicate better. You got to learn how to teach in different ways. And so to do it effectively, you can't just sit back, and kids aren't going to raise themselves. You got to be attentive and growing the entire time with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I 1,000% agree with my daughter, and that was one of the big markers for me when she was born, and wanting to be there, and just everything from making sure she has enough to eat, getting changed, and like little things like that, where it's like I look at myself, 10 years ago, prior to, she's 4, but 10 years before when she was born, and it's like I never really envisioned myself. I envisioned myself not getting married, not having kids, and for all the narcissistic, I wanted to do things the way I wanted to do them. I didn't want to be told you're doing something wrong. If somebody did, I was just not listening to them, and kind of
selective listening.
Selective listening, yeah. Now with so the selective listening, and it's funny because there are times, in internal family dynamics, you have that selective listening, but with kind of my mental illness and the therapy and the medication that I'm on, it really makes me very focused at a task at hand. So we're taping this podcast, and so I'm very focused on that at the moment. So if somebody asks me a question, I'd have to, outside of the podcast, I'd have to just take a second and kind of step out of, because this is where my focus is. And so sometimes I find myself where I'm focused on doing something, like legitimately focused, and my wife, asking a question. She's like, "You're not listening to me." And now, whether there are times where there might be that selective listening, I do find times also where I'm focused on whatever that is that I'm doing. Like, what are you doing on your computer? Why are you reaching out to people? Like, just questions like, wait, that's not gonna happen for 6 months? Why are you doing it today? Like, those types of things. But I found that's also a blessing to be able to have that focus, because at one time I didn't have that, and I think that's helped my marriage, being a father, Voices for Voices, talking to people such as yourself that are really changing the world for good, and it allows me to really focus in on that aspect. And now I'll go down rabbit trails every once in a while. But as long as that focus, like you mentioned, is the helping others, I like to think that that's one of my core values as well. Of wherever the path takes me, as long as I'm helping somebody, it may be with a donation, it may be with time, it may be like just talking to somebody, it may be like you've given many talks, many speeches, and being able just to share whatever that topic, whatever those experiences are, that there's going to be at least one takeaway where somebody's going to say, you know what, I went and listened to Erik talk, and he spoke for an hour, and I picked up on one thing. And the funny part is we don't know what those things are. We just try to package as much together and just really kind of hope and that one of those is going to resonate with others. What I already kind of asked you, what keeps you going. So for somebody who's maybe at that low point to get started, what steps? And I know these aren't like, oh well, if you do these, you're going to end up years later and you're going to be fully recovered and you're going to be on the up and up. But just maybe some thoughts for some of our audience members to listen and be like, oh, okay, like I never thought about that, or maybe I'll try that, and maybe that would be a way that we can share some of that knowledge of yours. So if you would jump in there.
Yeah, it's a good question, man. And one of the biggest things that I would say is you have to enter into relationship with, you have to get a community. It was one of the biggest game change. So when I first moved to San Diego, God just started doing a lot of amazing things in my life. And one of the things is he opened up an opportunity for me to live with some people, Darren and Eileen. They probably won't listen to this. But, well, I mean, I'm still friends with them today. Now they're traveling the country doing different things. They were just came and had dinner with my family. Gosh, this was maybe 5-6 months ago, but I'm still friends with them. But they're in recovery, and I lived with them for a while. But every single morning I got up and had my own personal time, what I needed to do personally, and I went to a 7 a.m. meeting. I did that probably 5-6 days out of the week for the first 9 months. Every single day I was there no matter what. Now, you don't necessarily need to go to an AA meeting every day at 7 a.m. to get that, but relationship and accountability to people who have your best interests in mind, who are on the same path, is going to be a game changer. Because you're not, if you're really accountable and in relationship with people who are growing, they're not going to let you sit and hide in the corner. They're not going to do it. When we're accountable to people and we're responsible and growing in relationship in a community, that in and of itself, for me personally, and I've seen in many people's lives, that in and of itself is going to change a lot of things. Just that by itself, you'll start to experience some healing and some more maturity and some growth. So I would emphasize the two biggest things is, I would say, healthy relationship with people and relationship with God. Those two things there, if I'm just going to keep it as simple as possible, those two things there, when honestly pursued, doesn't mean you got to do it perfect, but honestly pursuing being in community and accountable to people and pursuing that healthy relationship with healthy people and being intentional about a connection to God. There's many more things we could talk about, probably on a whole series of podcasts, but those two things right there, when pursued wholeheartedly and honestly, is a amazing place to start. That's going to begin to transform you in and of itself right there.
Totally. And I tend to think that judging judging how people perceive us, that what you just talked about, that really takes that and pushes that away. Like, I don't care what other people. I mean, if you're doing something detrimental and negative and against law, like, that's one thing. But if you're just moving forward and thinking about, oh, well, I wonder what somebody will think on social media, or this is my friends. What are they going to think? I think part of that is just be judgment free about what a person thinks about other people, and say, what, I don't know what they're going through, so I'm not gonna judge them, and so I'm not gonna worry about what if somebody makes a comment about what I wore in this post on social media, or what I did, or if I didn't go to this event or this cocktail party, or whatever that may be. I think that's huge, as well as that might mean removing some people from your life, and that's hard. Can you maybe jump into like that, like how you were able to kind of get to that point of, okay, there's my life now and kind of my circle, and now moving forward, kind of your recovery and forward, those people and change potentially.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought it up. I want to read this quote. I put this on my Instagram recently, but I want to read this quote and then answer your question. Mm-hmm. This is from an author. It's a pretty obscure author, David Foster Wallace. I haven't read much of his material. I'm not necessarily endorsing the author. Maybe if I knew more about him. But this quote, I just want to attribute it to him. But I love this quote. It says, "You'll stop worrying what others think about you when you realize how seldom they do."
And I read that I actually read that. No joke. Like, I read that. Look, I think it was yesterday on your site.
Yeah, I put it. I think it was yesterday, a couple of days ago. Yeah. Most people they got their own stuff. We think they're thinking about us. They're not. They got their own stuff going on. But at times you get that. What you mentioned, it is true. You'll get that. We've all heard the saying, show me your friends, I'll tell you your future. It's so true. And you got to just ask yourself, are the people that I'm around going to help me get to where I really want to go? And sometimes detaching from people we've spent a good amount of time around, because I'm being disloyal, these are my friends. If they're not helping you stay accountable and challenging you to live better consistently, I would challenge anyone's thinking who's listening, say, are they really even your friends? Yeah. Friends have your best interest in mind. Friends want you to succeed. Friends want you to be healthy. Friends want you to live in a healthy way. So for me personally, I had tried it many times because I had moved all around the state of Utah. I had lived out of the state of Utah as well. Like, I just kept thinking, like, if I just move somewhere, it'll fix it.
Right.
No, it doesn't. But when I finally did, I moved out of the state to San Diego, changed my number and moved to a whole different place. It was really a game changer. It was really a game changer because you got a chance to do things over. I'm sure I did it for years. I'm sure people have moved to a different state and they have no intention of changing themselves and they just recreate the same problems. But if you're really serious about it, it doesn't mean you have to move either. It can be helpful in certain situations, but that first initial change is going to be the most difficult one because you've been so rooted in with the friendships and in the communities that you're in. The initial breaking free is going to be the most difficult, but you'll find, I found in my own personal life and in others, that when you start living right and people start seeing you progress and doing the right thing, they go from critics to followers oftentimes. Critics to paying attention, maybe a better way to say it. They go from critics to paying attention to what you're doing and listening because they can see that there's. And so I tell people, it can't. To just say, oh, well, just leave your friends. It's easy. Do it now. It's not that easy in some circumstances. It's not. But I'll tell you this, it's not just worth it. It's needed. If you really, you can't constantly surround yourself with unhealthy people and think you're going to be healthy. It's not going to happen. And I understand some of those relationships may be long relationships. It might be difficult to do that. It could be, but you got to ask yourself what you really want. And you got to ask yourself, are these people really going to help get me there? And then in the midst of making that decision and really stepping into new relationships and healthier environments, letting our actions, letting the fruit of our life, so to speak, do the talking, has a way of silencing critics pretty quick.
Yeah, and I like to think, so my class the other day I was teaching, and we were talking about just budgeting and just at like a high level, and so I was telling them, the first time I heard the word budget is like, oh, this is a bad thing. It's trying to
control me.
Yeah, trying to control me. It's like, well, I can't go on vacation, I can't get that new car, or I can't do this, I can't do that, and on and on. And so what I've learned over the years is, and what I was mentioning to them was, that's not the case. Include the fun stuff, include that blow money, that fun money, and and I use the analogy that pretend you're driving down the road and your window's down and you're just throwing dollar bills out the window. Just have like an extreme example, and just say like, that's okay. Like, so if you want to go, if your thing's, going to Vegas for a weekend and you're able to, control yourself within yourself, go for it. If that means, buy a new car or looking at a new house or a condo or whatever those things are, an engagement ring for a significant other, include those within the budget. And as you're talking, I was just, the connections just started to come together with what we're talking about. Is talking about relationships with others, that we're basically taking a life and we're inputting things that are what we want, what's helping us get to where we want to get to. So we may have some things in the budget or in our lives that need to get changed, and some of those, like I said, are long-term relationships, and it might take some time for the fruit of disconnecting to actually show itself, and so that's where I think maybe like to our viewers and our audience, that a little bit of an analogy. If a budget's not always bad, and our lives aren't bad. We just might have things that are impeding us to where we want to go. And like a budget, we don't want to take all the fun out of our lives. We still want to have fun, but maybe what our idea of fun is more of a longevity type of a fun than a short-term fun. Now, we still might go and spend some money here and there and like that fun money, but we know that we have it, and we're not going to go overboard with it. Same with the people in our lives. We're say, okay, maybe I need to cut ties with this individual, and it's going to take some time. So maybe a year from now, I'll look back and say, a year ago I made the decision that I was going to put better people in my life, and I think individuals might see that as looking back of what their life had in it versus what it is now, and I think the hindsight's always 20/20. If we knew what we know now, back when things were happening, like, oh, well, I'm 41, so if I knew things I knew at 41, I would have not gone through some other, I would at least put myself in position to hopefully not go through some of the hurtful things, not only to me, but to my family and the people who were my friends, are my friends, to relationships. And I think that it's different for everybody. So it's not a one size fits all. And I really like your answer to having that community of people that are supportive of you and what you're doing. Doesn't mean you have to agree with every single thing they do. Maybe the one thing that really brings you together is that structure, that time. Like, okay, I know at this time I can come together and we'll have conversation or whatever's going to happen at that point. But we don't have to agree with 100% of what they do. And I like to think of celebrities, no matter how well liked a celebrity may be, no matter how many followers on social media, how many people attend the concerts, and how wealthy they are, there are still people out there that don't like them for whatever reason. So I like to think like myself, just like the average person, I can't expect that every single person that I meet is going to be 100% on board with what I'm doing. They might be on board with pieces and parts, or they might want to be in that wait and see of that critic and then slowly turn to, oh, I'm gonna keep an eye on what they're doing.
It happens often.
So how does that make you feel when you started noticing the critics turning into kind of checking, kind of scouting you out a little bit, and then potentially being a supporter or a follower with you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's fun to think about, I guess. I mean, it's changed over the years. Initially, it's more difficult because it's brand new, uncharted territory for somebody. I would say for me now, like, dude, I don't really care. I just so don't care, if I'm just going to be honest. Like, I'll get every once in a while someone will comment on something on social media or something, and if they're just being ignorant, sorry for lack of a better, forgive me, this is not the ideas of our sponsors, this is me, but I'll just say this: the idea that somebody I've never even met personally that follows me on social media wants to hop on and critique heavily, I'm like, come on, man. Like, I hope you have a great day, but I owe you nothing. I'll just delete the comment and block you. It's like, I'm not here. And I've blocked very few people, but I've done it before. It's like, you don't comment anything except for to critique me. It's like, I don't need that. I don't even know you. I don't really even think twice about it. People who I maybe know a little bit maybe make a comment or something, and you can go back and read through. So sometimes I just comment and I say, hope you're having a good day. That's it. So I don't necessarily owe any. We live in a world where we share a lot of our lives on social media, and we share a lot of our journey, and I do it. A lot of people do it. So sometimes people can get the idea that they know you personally, and maybe they did for a season or do, but just because we see someone on social media doesn't mean we know them personally. And again, like you were saying, it's like, you don't need to agree with everything. We've bought into this big lie in our society, like we can only be friends or spend time around people that we agree with on everything. Man, that just creates so much division. I don't need to agree with you on everything. I can still have respect. There's probably far more that we do agree on, and we can find that common ground. And if we disagree, let's learn how to speak civilly about it. But people who critiqued me and then maybe have reached out at different points for help or became, supporters in some way, that's great. It makes you feel good. Early on, I probably put a lot more thought into it. I got much more going on. I got a 6'5" and 1-year-old boys. I got a marriage, I got a business to run. I got more to do than debate. Sometimes, people will just be like, well, you're wrong about this or something, even in person after speaking before it's happened before. Well, what about da-da-da-da-da? And I'm like, you can tell immediately most of the time if someone wants to discuss or debate. Yeah. And there's a big difference. If someone wants to discuss, if I have the time and everything, it's the right, I'll discuss, absolutely. If someone just wants to come in hot and just wants to debate, look, even if they come up and they're like, yeah, but 2 + 2 is 5. Okay, you're right. Have a good day. See you later. I love you, man. I don't owe you anything, and I'm not really in the mood to debate. So I hope you have a wonderful day.
Absolutely. I think those are great words for anyone to really just think about. We have our lives, we have things that we're doing, and so how much stock do we put into potential things that could be harmful or take me down a negative path? It's like, no, I'm going to use this as a tool. I'm going to do what I need to do for my business, for my family. And then if somebody wants to make a comment, then that's great. If somebody wants to leave a negative, and I went through it when I first wrote one of my books, and the first bad comment came out, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what do I gotta do? What are people gonna see? They're gonna see all the positive and then this negative, and they're not gonna, and that was really, really hard. But that was also at a time where I was still trying to learn who the real me was, not the facade of what I wanted to portray to others, that I'm like this jet setter and I'm doing all these fantastic things. Even my wife, kind of early on in my recovery, when we met, met out one night, and so she saw kind of little bit of the old me, and so early on in my recovery, she's like, "Who is this person? Like, you're not as fun as you used to, like, you're not drinking. You're like, is this really you? Are you putting on the front to me as your wife?" And now things are much better, where she understands what I'm doing, and sees that, like, where I'm putting, again, to your point, where your heart's at, what you're putting your, what are you tied to emotionally, not just the paycheck. That, like, yeah, we need the paycheck, but if I'm emotionally involved, then it's something like humanity. I mean, let's just throw that. That's something that can keep us wanting to come back and to help others. And to your earlier point of how you go from one conversation, a tough conversation of listening, to the next one. It's humanity. You're just coming back to help somebody that needs help or needs guidance. Maybe you're the only person that they've talked to, like, in a month, like face to face or through Zoom. Or
having those tough conversations with people that are really, really struggling too. I'll just say this: sometimes it's less about busting out all the special tools and skills. That stuff's all great. Get as many certifications, grow as much as you can. I'm all for that. But sometimes just loving people and listening and being there for them does way more, or just does equally as much, at least. But I'll say this too, man. In terms of critics, I've realized this over the years. I heard this quote from somewhere, and I don't remember where, but it was something to the effect, if you're not picking up some haters along the way, you're probably not making as big as impact as you think.
Yeah.
There's gonna be critics. And one of my favorite pastors to listen to, Bill Johnson at Bethel Church, he says, I'm paraphrasing, this may be verbatim, but he also says, if you're living off of the praises of people, you're gonna die by their criticisms. So if my identity is rooted in what you think about me, if you think good about me, I'm gonna do great. The day you criticize me, my world, it's terrible. It's the worst day ever. I don't have any fuel to go on. So, we grow in our identity in that place. But yeah, who doesn't want accolades and be recognized for that? Of course. But at the same time, it's like, if that's fueling me, well, 10 praises, this one critic over here, my day's terrible. Yet the majority of people are liking what I'm doing. There's this small amount of people. You pick up some haters along the way. Not trying to, but if you're making a real impact, it's a chance it could happen.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the conversation that we had. Can you share how people can get in touch with you, what's next for you, and so people can connect?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that, man. And appreciate coming on. Love what you guys are doing. Glad I could just help and be a part of it in some way. So there's some changes going on with what I'm doing career-wise. So I'll just say this. The best email to reach me at that's always going to be live and active is just my personal email. It's Erik Frederickson at Gmail. ErikFrederickson at Gmail. Erik Frederickson at Gmail. You can reach me there. I've spent the last 4 or 5 years, the bulk of my time, working with people specific to recovery. I still do have some clients that I'm working with in that, and probably always will, at least a little bit. I love it, especially people who are serious and really do want to change. But I'm moving more and more into business coaching and consulting, and I've been doing that for some years, but now it's becoming the bulk of what I'm doing. So, I love working with people who are serious, want to change, and are ready to change with what they're doing. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we can't be more happy to have you with us for the hour and share your experience, your knowledge, your expertise, your experience. You're really talking about who you are as a human being and getting down to the heart of you and what made you start on that path, wanting to have one of the core values is helping others. And we really appreciate you spending time with us, and we wish you and whatever endeavors that you go into, nothing but the best. And anyway, we can obviously remain in contact. We will, but for those listeners and audience out there, I mean, Erik, you heard him and saw him. So I mean, he's a great person, a great guy, and what he stands for is awesome. And so, thank you again.
I appreciate it, man. I do. Love what you guys are doing, and love to stay in contact. And anything I can do to help, please don't hesitate, man, to reach out.
Absolutely, great. So we'll close there. Thank you for joining us today. Just wanted to throw out here at the end of our taping. Do you or someone you know shop on Amazon.com? I know myself and my wife do. If so, please consider choosing Voices for Voices for your charity of choice through the Amazon Smile program. That is for 501c3 charity organizations. We have the easy-to-follow instructions at voicesforvoices.org/Amazon-smile. The best part is there's 0 fees, and it's 100% free to do. So once again, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Voices for Voices podcast. And a big thank you goes out to our guest, Erik Frederickson, from Recovering Reality and an all-around great human being. Until next time, I am Justin Allen Hayes, founder and executive director of Voices for Voices, host and humanitarian. We hope you have a great day and be a voice for yourself or somebody in need.